Next topic is the disaster response. So, moving to disaster response, the term itself indicates something which happens after a disaster. Okay, all the activities which are occurring after a disaster can be termed as a disaster response. Now, we can see what is the definition. It's a set of activities taken during a disaster or immediately following a disaster directed towards saving life and property. Activities that deal with the effect of disaster may include medical care, evacuation, all these things we have already mentioned in the previous classes. Uh, just after a disaster, what are things have to be taken care, like it includes medical care, evacuation, search and rescue, provision of emergency water, food and shelter, debris removal, and stabilization of unsafe buildings and landforms. The objectives, we can see what are the objectives of disaster response. First thing is, it is aimed in providing immediate assistance to the human or the buildings to improve the health, life and support for the affected population. Second thing is, it is focused in meeting the basic needs of the people till more permanent and sustainable solutions are found. The third thing is, it depends on the adequacy of preparedness. So once if we are prepared to overcome a disaster, then the response activities could be reduced or minimized. So the next thing is, the success in responding approximately depends on early planning, organization and training. So response, all the activities are properly should be planned earlier. That is, preparedness stage will be planning by all government, also the organizations, etc., to evacuate the people and to help the people or support the people after the disaster. Disaster response preparedness are the pre-disaster activities that are undertaken to minimize loss of life, injury, and property damage in a disaster, and to ensure that rescue, relief, rehabilitation, and other services can be provided following a disaster. So, these are regarding the R's we have already mentioned about the rescue, relief, rehabilitation. Preparedness for the first and immediate response is referred to as emergency preparedness. So, immediately what we are going to do after a disaster can be termed as emergency preparedness. Factors that determine the nature of disaster response are, firstly, we can mention about the type of disaster occurring, then the ability to take pre-impact actions, severity and magnitude of the disaster, the capability of the sustained operations, identification of likely response requirements, then um, informations. All this can be taken as the factors which determine the nature of disaster response. The type of disaster, we can mention like whether it is for a short area, for a or whether it will be continuing or etc. So disaster manifests in many forms. Its onset may provide long warning, short warning, or no warning at all. It would influence the effectiveness of activating the preparedness plans, mobilization, and application of response approach. So, in the case of flood, there will be always a slight warning, like a rainfall. When continuous heavy rainfall occurs, we can expect for a flood. Therefore, prepared plans can be executed very properly. But in the case of earthquake, a sudden tremor occurs and nothing can be done, especially if the magnitude is very high. We cannot